Tom was asking you what Theresa May needs to do when she goes to Brussels. Is there anything that she can do that is going to satisfy her party and the Tory members back home?
It's going to be very difficult because I'm not sure if her party knows what they want. And the problem that Theresa May has is she may win votes from this flank of her party, but she'll lose votes from this flank of her party. And she can't rely upon other parties bailing her out. I mean, what she's trying to do is to reach a deal that the EU find palatable, that the British parliamentarians find palatable, and it's really, really difficult. And the problem is this: there are 51 days to go, and she's playing a real risky game of poker, because what she's saying to MPs is, unless you support the deal I negotiate, or even the amended deal, we could leave the EU with no deal whatsoever, which would be catastrophic. So many parliamentarians now, and I support them, are saying, just at least get an extension that avoids a panic of us possibly leaving the EU without any deal whatsoever.
Look, in the meantime, when your conversations with business, of course, businesses have to make the contingency plans for the no-deal scenario. And we've heard from so many CEOs coming on Bloomberg TV talking about how they're preparing from that. Are you concerned that there's going to be an exodus of investment out of London when March 29th hits?
Look, I meet businesses on a daily basis, and I'm trying to reassure them that the underlying strengths of our city aren't going to change even if we leave the European Union. Their concern is the uncertainty. They've got a plan for every contingency, and so they are making plans as we speak, as you'd expect them to do so, as their shareholders would demand them to do so, to plan for the possibility of us leaving the EU without any deal whatsoever, us leaving the EU with a half-decent transition, but the uncertainties do nobody any good. What the Prime Minister could do very, very easily is say, look, we need more time to reach a deal with the EU to get the votes through Parliament. Let's get some more time before we have to leave, so it's not March the 29th. And it'll give us time to reach a deal that's palatable to our Parliament, but also the EU.
Should we have a second referendum, Sadiq?
Well, I think Parliament's in gridlock. I think the reality is, forget Parliament being able to reach a position, forget the Conservative Party being divided, the British Cabinet is divided. In that situation, we've got gridlock. Give the British public
a second referendum.
Well, yeah, the British public having a say would avoid the gridlock, and it would mean them taking back control.
Mayor Khan, I want to move to more basic matters. Brandon from London emails in and says, please ask the mayor about rent control. I can't afford to live anywhere. You really set up for the domestic London audience an arch issue for your next campaign, which is rent control. It affects New York, Washington, San Francisco, and on and on. Can you actually get to a reasonable housing economy in Greater London?
Well, if you see around the world, what you're seeing is a mass urbanisation where people are moving towards cities. And so what we need to do in cities is a number of things. Build more homes. They've got to be genuinely affordable. That'll take time. In the meantime, we've got to make sure that the rents that private tenants pay are affordable. So I've asked a team of experts to go and do some work about how we can make sure we have a system that stabilises rent and is a form of rent control. I appreciate there are some models that have led to landlords taking properties off the market. There are some models that have led to concerns around the world from the 1970s. What I'm after is a model that allows properties to come on stream, landlords aren't deterred, but gives tenants security of tenure with rents they can afford.
Right. Mr. Mayor, I notice your Labour Party in mass disarray. We asked you what you need from the Prime Minister. What do you need from Mr. Corbyn? His polls are shocking. For a foreigner, it's amazing to see how he does in the United Kingdom polls. What do you need from Mr. Corbyn right now?
Anybody who followed the American presidential elections, as I did, knows to ignore the polls. And anybody who campaigned in the referendum campaign knows not to follow the polls. So listen, the really important poll that matters is the one that takes place on election day. And one of the things that Jeremy Corbyn is trying to do is to unite a divided country, to make sure that the Labour Party is not simply a party for cities, but also for regions as well and for rural parts of our country. And it's a challenge, because we've talked about how divided the government is, but our country is quite divided as well. I know you've got similar problems in the great United States of America as well. And I think great leaders build bridges and bring people together. Well, that's one of the things Jeremy's trying to do. Look, the Labour Party has spent the last few years being out of office. We've got to demonstrate to the British public we're a government in waiting, and that means having not just eye-catching policies that will appeal to new voters, but showing that we can be a party that is both pro-business but also pro-social justice too.
Sadiq, I've had some people tell me on this set that actually what will be more worrying for financial markets than even a no deal is a Jeremy Corbyn in power and is a Labour government in power. Would you be concerned that if we went to another general election, Jeremy Corbyn managed to win, that would drive business even further out of London, even more so than already?
I mean, that's a concern that some businesses have said to you, and that's why it's really important that Jeremy Corbyn's Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, is out talking to businesses to give them the reassurance they need to make sure they realise that the Labour Party sees them as being a force for good. The key thing is to make sure that more Londoners and more people across the country benefits from the fruits of globalisation, from the fruits of these great businesses. You've seen, not just in our country, not just in America, but across Europe, many communities crying out for a greater share of the fruits of globalisation, for a greater share of the profits they see a small number of people making. And one of the things that the Shadow Chancellor is trying to do with his team is to reassure businesses about the fact that they are welcome in London and across our country, but also to work with them to address some of the inequalities that exist in our city and our country.